Hello and welcome to another episode of DeHaan on Fire, brought to you by Firewise Learning Academy. I'm your host, Tim Davis. DeHaan on Fire is a YouTube channel and podcast featuring education, commentary, and conversation with Dr. John DeHaan and colleagues and friends. At a crime scene or a fire scene where a human fatality has occurred, sometimes there's so little remains of the victim, some think there's nothing left to test. I asked Dr. DeHaan about this in this episode today. DeHaan on Fire contains discussion and video not suitable for all audiences. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. Dr. DeHaan, is there such a thing as too little human remains to do forensic testing?
Well, that's kind of an interesting concept. Technically, I'd say no. I've had cases where the body was very badly incinerated, and the issue was, what were the residues left at the scene, on the floor or on the furniture or things like that, to see what's going on. You need a certain minimum amount for things like dental identification and things like that. If the remains are too badly charred, of course, you can't do DNA, but you can still have a lot of fire damage and have some useful information from the bones. Good forensic anthropologist can give you quite a bit of information about the decedent just from even fragmentary bones. We saw that in the multiple death fire scene or fire case in Mexico a few years ago, where the forensic anthropologist identified hundreds of bone fragments after a major prolonged incineration, and were able to actually pair up the mandible bones for left and right, and managed to say that there were the remains of at least 18 adult humans burned in this location, just from pairing up those things and saying, we can identify these as human and on their shape and size, and so that was a really useful bit of information about a tragic event. And then obviously you'd like to be able to do toxicology on the blood, and if there's no blood left, then you're kind of stymied on that, and so it's a challenge. But obviously, we have had some success with very badly burned remains.
Now, if there were some pets that had also perished in the fire but were not as burned up as the human remains, would there be some possibility of crossover or any evidence in those that would apply to the person?
Yes, that's a resource of forensic information that's very often overlooked by investigators. And the theory is, if you had a pet or even rodents and things like that were in the structure or in the room at the time of the fire and living and breathing, they're going to be exposed to the same toxic materials as your human victims. And it's always worth identifying the remains and having a necropsy, which is the technical word for examination of non-human remains, conducted, as well as toxicology. I've had pets, dogs and cats, beaten, shot, stabbed, poisoned, and in a couple of cases beaten to death or kicked to death as part of the investigation, or as part of the incident. And so it's really important. The problem is, a lot of investigators go, well, my pathologist won't touch non-human remains. Well, sometimes there's nothing different about doing an animal other than you need the same kind of documentation. I remember one very, very well-known forensic pathologist who said, I've necropsied cats and rats and parrots and ferrets and dogs and frogs. If they're alive at the time of the fire, I want to be able to find out what killed them. And I really appreciate that. And it's a very good guidance. I of course come along in most of the cases late, and they present me with pictures of the scene, and my reaction is, well, what happened to the dog? And the investigator looks at me and says, what dog? I didn't see a dog. And I said, well, there's a bag of dog food by the back door and a dog bowl. What happened to the dog? Oh, no, he must have been somewhere else, and we didn't save him. Well, you should have. Well, it's a little late then, but there are times when, yes, animals can be very useful forensic evidence.
Thanks for watching another episode of DeHaan on Fire, brought to you by FireWise Learning Academy. If you have any questions for Dr. DeHaan, please email them to questions@DeHaanOnFire. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. Ring the bell to get notifications of new uploads to the channel, and don't forget to set your devices to receive those updates. For now, signing off for FireWise Learning Academy and DeHaan on Fire, I'm your host, Tim Davis. See you next time.